Hey, this is Augie, Augie's Locker Room. When you come to the store, you're going to see things that you've probably never seen before unless you've been to a museum. Great items that go back to the Rockney era to the present. Website, augieslockerroom.com. Visit us here or the website.
Tim O'Malley with Tim Priester for Irish Illustrated before Notre Dame takes on 21-point underdog at this point, Marshall. And I think there's a couple things we're both looking for. Improvement from the offensive line, and that should lead to Tyler Buckner being able to utilize a little bit more of the offense than last week.
Marcus Freeman already hinted at it, and it's going to happen. They're going to play fast. They're going to be very aggressive offensively today, partly, I guess, in response to the way they approached things last week. But this can be a bit of a challenging Marshall defense. They have some players, but Notre Dame's going to be aggressive. It'll be a good opportunity to evaluate Tyler Buckner. He's going to throw much more than he did last week, I would anticipate, while, of course, still trying to establish a running game against a defensive line that probably of the three areas of their defense, the least potential with the Marshall defensive line.
But still a situation where Jarrett Patterson coming back should really help. If Jarrett Patterson's not there, you still have the question mark of communication, because it seemed like at times they were able to handle Ohio State, but that was peeling linebackers. If Marshall shows something else in the blitz packages, you've got to be able to communicate it, because one of those can ruin a drive for a young offense, and that's, I think, what we're looking at is a young, evolving Notre Dame offense right now.
I'm sure it was a very tough week for the offensive line. They have to be more cohesive than that, and we all know that Zeke Correll's a better football player than that. Yeah. I don't think that was a physical thing last week. It was, however you want to evaluate, but the first game of the year, and he played accordingly. The same way with Josh Lugg. I think Jarrett Patterson in there brings that unit together. I know people are talking about center. For right now, he's the guard. You don't scrap everything after one game. Zeke Correll's a better center than that, and we saw that 2 years ago.
Defensively last week, Ohio State had 7 points with 30 seconds to go in the third quarter. Imagine signing up for that as a Notre Dame fan, but we kind of harped on the fact that it was odd to me that the defensive line wore down, because they weren't out there all day. It was not as big. You could be out there a lot more than that. One bad quarter, and I think Marcus Freeman kind of felt that's the floor. We should not see that anymore. And against Marshall's kind of revamped offensive line, I do think Notre Dame's front seven will have its day.
We talked about this during the week. I mean, I think this is where Notre Dame's greatest advantage is defensively. Notre Dame is going to win that battle up front. They have 3 new starting offensive linemen, and they lost some talent from last year. They've got some players at receiver. The LeBourne kid is a Florida State transfer that is a good football player, but I don't think that the quarterback play from Marshall today is going to be good enough, and I would expect the biggest difference in this game is Notre Dame's defensive line against Marshall's offensive line. Marshall's in a little bit of trouble there, I believe.
And I don't think it's going to be wholesale substitutions like Brian Kelly used against Ball State, where he was running an entire second-team kickoff return. They're not going to treat the game like that after a loss. But I do think you'll see some more players worked in. It was a low number last week. Benjamin Morrison obviously was the best effort by a freshman. I think you'll see some more guys worked in, a little bit more Jaden Mickey, get him some confidence. And we expect to see Tobias Merriweather, because you want to see a 5-player rotation, a wide receiver at this point.
I think we're jumping back to the defense. I think what we're going to see a little more of is Justin Adamalola and Isaiah Foskey on the field at the same time, and bumping Riley Mills inside. We've gotten a little bit of info that's a possibility. It's a variation and the variety that Notre Dame is able to offer with their defensive line. But look for those Notre Dame's 2 best pass rush defensive ends to spend a little time on the field together today.
And finally, there should be some changes, though, on kickoff return, because they struggled so badly against Ohio State, though. Is it personnel changes at the block? It's not personnel change in the return man and Chris Tyree. It might just be drilling down more. But it was disheartening to see, I'm sure for Brian Mason, his first game, that he kind of, as good as John Stott did punting and Blake Grupe hitting a clutch kick, that the kickoff return team really did hamper their efforts last week.
Yeah, and I would think that I don't think there will be wholesale changes, but again, because you spent the entire month of August determining who your best kick return guys are. So, like, for example, Tui Alamaka, a guy that we know that they love, he wasn't very good on one of those kick returns. You just drill it down a little bit more. You don't make the solution a lot of times is suggested after game 1 to make wholesale changes. No, go with the guys that you know are good. Make changes where you feel they're necessary. But I think it's like play calling. It's really more execution than it is some of the other things that we talk about.
That's it for us pregame. We'll be back postgame after number 8 Notre Dame takes on Marshall and Marcus Freeman's home opener.